Carl Jung's warning, the hidden peril of seeing what others can't. As Carl Jung once said, your vision will become clear only when you look into your own heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes. On today's journey with spiritual wisdom, we will uncover Jung's hidden warning about the peril of seeing what others cannot, the gift that can either isolate you or transform you into something extraordinary. But the real question is, how can we use this knowledge to grow stronger, wiser, and more fulfilled in our daily lives? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever felt like you see truths others overlook? Share your experiences in the comments below, and let's begin this exploration together. 1. Jung's dangerous discovery. Carl Jung's discovery of differentiated perception revealed a profound spiritual reality. Some individuals are born with the rare ability to perceive what others cannot. They don't just see the surface, they see through it. They detect subtle micro-expressions, hidden motives, repressed emotions, and the silent tension that hovers in conversations long before words are spoken. Their minds are like tuning forks for the human psyche, vibrating in response to the frequencies most people have forgotten how to hear. But this gift, while deeply connected to advanced consciousness and spiritual awakening, does not come without a cost. Jung found that these highly perceptive souls often live in silent suffering, not because they are broken, but because they are awake in a sleeping world. The tragedy is that society mistakes their depth for instability. The spiritually awakened are frequently mislabeled as overthinkers, hypersensitive, or emotionally intense. Yet the truth is, their pain is not born from their sensitivity. It is born from being surrounded by those who numb theirs. They walk through life absorbing energy like sponges, knowing when someone is smiling through grief, sensing deceit before it's spoken, and recognizing patterns that others dismiss as coincidence. But instead of being honored for their perception, they are often shunned for it. Their clarity threatens the illusions people cling to. Jung understood this deeply and warned that those who see too much are either destroyed by their insight or transformed by it. These individuals live with a constant internal contradiction. Their mind craves truth, while their heart yearns for connection. But how do you connect in a world that doesn't recognize the language of the soul? As their awareness grows, so does the emotional distance between them and others. They become mirrors that reflect the hidden wounds people refuse to face. And because of this, people project their shadow onto them. They become scapegoats, repositories for unresolved pain, simply because they refuse to wear the mask. This shadow projection creates a loop where the more light they carry, the more darkness they attract from others. However, this spiritual trial is also the initiation. Jung believed that if these individuals can survive the emotional weight of their insight, they emerge not only with wisdom, but with power. They learn to set sacred boundaries. They begin to protect their energy with the same intensity that once left them drained. They stop explaining their depth to those committed to misunderstanding it. And instead of shrinking, they rise. Their pain becomes purpose. Their isolation becomes refinement. Their curse becomes calling. They evolve into spiritual warriors, wounded but wise, misunderstood but unshakably aligned. This is the unseen peril Jung spoke of the danger of awakening in a world that rewards blindness. But if you are one of those rare souls who feels everything, sees everything, and knows everything before it is said, know this: your perception is not madness, it is mastery. It is the silent language of the universe, whispering through your nervous system. And while it may hurt, while it may break you apart, it is also your path to wholeness. Let your inner truth be your compass. Let your boundaries be your sanctuary. And let your spiritual awakening be the fire that burns away the illusion, not the light you dim to make others comfortable. 2. The cost of superior perception. Those who carry the gift of superior perception often walk through life misunderstood, not because they are broken, but because they reflect back the very truths others refuse to face. When you can intuitively sense tension in a room, detect the subtle lies behind a smile, and feel the heaviness of unspoken emotions, you become a walking mirror to the unconscious. Carl Jung understood this well. He observed how individuals with this spiritual intelligence were often blamed not for what they did, but for what they revealed. You see, the moment your presence forces someone to confront the parts of themselves they've kept hidden, you trigger resistance. And when people feel exposed, they don't turn inward, they lash outward. That's how the scapegoat phenomenon is born. You become the easy target for discomfort, guilt, shame, or anger that has nothing to do with you. It's not your truth that hurts them. It's the reflection of their own they cannot escape when you're near. This is the heavy consequence of spiritual development: to see what others can't, and to carry what others won't. Your ability to pierce through the illusion makes you invaluable and invisible all at once. Instead of praise, you're met with suspicion. Instead of gratitude, you receive blame. Because your spiritual clarity threatens the illusions others depend on to feel safe. You become the outsider, not because you're wrong, but because you're right too soon. And as you walk this road of awakening, you'll discover the emotional solitude that comes with being awake in a world that sleeps with its eyes open. But this loneliness is not a punishment. It is a preparation, a deepening of your connection with truth, so you can hold space for it without needing permission to exist. It is in this space that your true power begins to blossom, not in being seen by the world, but in seeing the world for what it really is. Those who are spiritually gifted often feel like they don't belong, not because they're weak, but because they're tuned into frequencies most people spend their whole lives trying to ignore. And when you carry this level of awareness, you inevitably encounter the emotional backlash of others who are unconsciously triggered by your presence. Their shadow recognizes your light before their conscious mind can name what it feels. That is the cost of seeing through illusions. You become the reminder people didn't ask for. But your role is not to fix their discomfort. Your role is to stay rooted in your own spiritual wisdom, to continue the journey not with bitterness, but with reverence for the truth you've been entrusted to carry. The real battle is not external. It's in not shrinking your light just to make others comfortable in their denial. Every time you are misunderstood, blamed, or pushed away for simply being aware, remember, this is a signal of how deeply your perception is needed. Your gift was never meant to be popular. It was meant to be sacred. So don't trade your clarity for company. Don't dim your spiritual insight for acceptance. This journey is not about being liked. It's about being aligned with the truth that calls you forward. You are not alone. You are ahead. Keep walking. 3. 4 patterns of perception. Carl Jung revealed that seeing what others can't is not always a gift. It can be a psychological and spiritual burden that few understand. He identified 4 patterns of introverted intuitive perception, each reflecting a unique kind of intelligence and spiritual sensitivity. The first is the feeling intuitive, someone who doesn't merely recognize emotions, they absorb them. These individuals step into a room and instantly feel the emotional undercurrents no one speaks of. The sadness behind polite smiles, the anxiety beneath calm words. They are emotional sponges, and without boundaries or grounding practices, their gift turns into chronic fatigue, anxiety, or emotional burnout. Their challenge is to alchemize emotional chaos into compassion without becoming consumed by it. Then there is the thinking intuitive, a deeply analytical type who sees invisible patterns and anticipates future outcomes with surgical precision. They are often misunderstood, perceived as too intense or controlling, when in truth, they are simply perceiving the natural flow of events before others catch on. These people often feel lonely in their intelligence, burdened by the foresight that isolates them. Yet their spiritual growth lies in learning to trust divine timing and not always needing others to validate what they already know. Their wisdom becomes truly powerful when shared with humility and patience. The sensation. Intuitive brings another layer of perception, the ability to detect psychological wounds through the body. These individuals feel the truth in someone's physical presence, noticing subtle shifts in voice, posture, or energy that speak louder than words. They can sense inner turmoil behind a straight face, or trauma locked within a stiff spine. Often, they feel compelled to heal others, but this desire can become a trap if they don't learn to protect their own vitality. Their spiritual path involves learning when to intervene and when to let go, understanding that not every signal is their responsibility to fix. Finally, the pure intuitive is a rare and often overwhelmed soul. This person receives a non-stop flow of symbolic, unconscious, and archetypal information. Their dreams are vivid, their visions prophetic, their thoughts abstract and otherworldly. But this gift can easily become a curse if they don't anchor it in structure and clarity. They may become disoriented, anxious, or lost in the flood of unprocessed spiritual data. Jung believed these individuals must develop strong inner discipline to bring order to the chaos, turning raw intuition into spiritual insight that serves rather than confuses. Each of these intuitive types carries a deep spiritual wisdom that, when misunderstood, leads to suffering, but when honored, becomes a source of inner power and sacred intelligence. Jung's work was a warning that extraordinary perception is not simply a talent, it is a responsibility. And those who see what others can't must learn how to protect their minds, care for their energy, and give themselves the grace to be misunderstood while they walk a path few dare to tread. 4. The 3 dangers. Jung revealed that the danger of heightened perception is not in the ability itself, but in the psychological cost of seeing what others cannot bear to see. When a person awakens to a deeper layer of reality, able to detect lies without words, sense emotional tension in silence, or read what's beneath the mask of civility, they don't just gain insight, they inherit a burden. The first danger, as Jung described, is the disruption of the collective unconscious. Society depends on unspoken agreements, illusions we silently co-create to keep the world stable and digestible. But when one person breaks this spell and exposes hidden truths, it destabilizes the entire group dynamic. Their awareness becomes a mirror people avoid, because to see through illusion means confronting pain, shame, and fear that have been long buried. This threat to social harmony doesn't provoke celebration. It provokes rejection, blame, or isolation. That leads to the second danger, psychological isolation. The more attuned you are to the spiritual undercurrents and emotional vibrations around you, the harder it is to remain connected to those who are still asleep. You start feeling like a foreigner in your own home, like a soul surrounded by bodies that have forgotten they carry one. Empaths and spiritually awakened individuals often describe this estrangement not because they are superior, but because they cannot unsee what they've seen. When everyone else is speaking the language of illusion and you've learned the dialect of truth, conversation becomes hollow. Relationships become strained, and belonging becomes a memory rather than a reality. Without grounded spiritual wisdom and practices that anchor your sensitivity, you drift farther from others and closer to an inner void. But the most dangerous cost of all is identity dissolution, what Jung called participation mystique. In your heightened state of perception, you don't just observe others' unconscious energies, you absorb them. Their sadness becomes your sorrow. Their fear becomes your anxiety. Their confusion distorts your clarity. Over time, your own sense of self becomes blurred, like ink dropped in water. You begin to lose yourself, not in dreams, but in the psychic debris of everyone around you. This happens slowly, subtly, and often unconsciously. You might feel fatigued, scattered, or emotionally overwhelmed without realizing you've become an energetic sponge. The gift of deep perception turns into a curse when you carry everyone's truth, but forget your own. Without inner discernment and a strong sense of spiritual selfhood, you disappear into the very chaos you once tried to decode. And yet, this peril is also an initiation. It is not a punishment for being sensitive. It is a challenge to become sovereign. Spiritual awakening is not just about seeing. It is about holding your center when everything else pulls at your soul. Intelligence without integration leads to fragmentation. The spiritually wise don't just perceive, they protect their perception with boundaries, rituals, and a deep understanding of their purpose. To navigate the dangers Jung warned of, you must know how to carry your gift without letting it consume you. Because in the end, the awakened ones are not just those who see. They are those who learn to stay whole in a fractured world. 5. The path of integration. Individuation process. To truly survive and evolve, highly perceptive individuals must develop the rare ability to distinguish between what belongs to them and what they're unconsciously absorbing from the world around them. Without this essential discernment, they risk carrying emotional weight that was never theirs, to begin with other people's fears, projections, anxieties, and hidden resentments. This invisible burden becomes a silent toxin, eroding their well-being from within. Jung warned that such sensitivity, when left unguarded, doesn't just isolate, it destroys. Recognizing the boundary between the self and others is not a theoretical exercise. It is the foundation of spiritual development. Only by identifying what is theirs can these individuals begin to reclaim their energy and navigate life from a place of centered clarity instead of emotional chaos. But separating yourself from others' emotions isn't enough. The next stage of spiritual development requires turning inward and confronting the parts of yourself that you've long ignored or denied your shadow. Carl Jung stated, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." If you haven't met your own shadow, you will inevitably become entangled in others' darkness. People will project their unacknowledged pain onto you, and without shadow integration, you'll unconsciously absorb and even mirror it. By facing your own inner wounds, your shame, your fear of abandonment, your buried rage, you begin the sacred process of inner alchemy. You stop attracting relationships that reflect your unhealed parts. You stop repeating patterns that only deepen your pain. You reclaim your personal power by owning your story instead of being haunted by it. Once you've established internal clarity and done the work of shadow integration, you are called to a higher task, participating in the world without being consumed by it. Jung emphasized the necessity of building psychological containers, spaces within your mind and soul, where you can hold the unconscious content of others without internalizing it. This is the difference between drowning in emotional waves and becoming the ocean that holds them. You learn to be present without being penetrated, to witness pain without collapsing under it, to listen deeply without losing your voice. In doing so, you become the container, the sacred space, the mirror that reflects without absorbing. You develop emotional sovereignty, the ability to feel everything and still choose what to embody. Your sensitivity becomes your strength, not your downfall. In everyday life, this looks like setting boundaries with grace, honoring your need for solitude, practicing spiritual hygiene through journaling, breath work, and mindful detachment. It means learning to say no without guilt and yes without self-betrayal. It's about choosing connections that nourish rather than drain you, and understanding that not every cry for help requires your sacrifice. Spirituality isn't about escaping into higher realms. It's about learning how to stay grounded in this one while carrying the wisdom of many. The awakened soul doesn't shut down to survive. It transforms to serve. And in that transformation, perception becomes power, sensitivity becomes intelligence, and every wound becomes a doorway to deeper spiritual awakening. 6. Examples of outcomes. Carl Jung's warning about the hidden peril of seeing what others can't is not just a psychological insight, it's a spiritual initiation. The ability to perceive beyond the surface, to intuitively grasp the invisible threads of emotion, truth, and shadow is often mistaken for a gift. But what if that very gift becomes the burden that isolates you, dismantles your reality, or pushes you toward the edge of madness? Jung observed that those with heightened perceptual intelligence, those who detect subtle cues, unspoken tensions, or the unconscious motives of others, often pay a heavy psychological price, not because they are broken, but because the weight of what they see cannot be carried without inner structure, humility, and integration. And history offers examples of both collapse and transcendence. Nietzsche, a man of staggering intellect, saw too much, too fast, and too raw. He dissected the illusions of morality, religion, and culture with the precision of a prophet. But without a spiritual container to hold that fire, it burned through him. His breakdown wasn't due to weakness, but from being overwhelmed by truths he could not emotionally process. His spiritual intelligence turned self-destructive because it lacked grounding and wholeness. In contrast, Meister Eckhart, a mystic who also saw deeply into the human soul, chose a path of surrender. He did not weaponize insight. He sanctified it. His spiritual awakening came not through domination of knowledge, but through union with the divine mystery. He didn't collapse under truth. He became a vessel of it. Through humility and devotion, his vision transformed into compassion, not condemnation. His integration allowed him to see clearly, without fragmenting his identity, proving that perception becomes wisdom only when it is rooted in stillness. And Carl Jung, standing between these two paths, faced the same abyss. His own psychological descent into the unconscious nearly destroyed him. But instead of resisting, he documented, he painted, he dialogued with the archetypes within. He chose the long road of individuation. In facing his shadow and making it conscious, Jung didn't just survive, he evolved. He taught us that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are, and that only by embracing the darkness within can we illuminate the path ahead. Spiritual wisdom, then, is not the result of what you see. It's how you live with what you see. It's not the perception alone, but the integration of that perception with purpose, heart, and self-awareness that determines whether the insight heals or harms. To see what others can't is to be entrusted with a sacred task. To transmute insight into intelligence and intelligence into love. Without that, perception becomes poison. With it, perception becomes power. 7. Relationships that help integration. Carl Jung, in his profound psychological and spiritual wisdom, identified 3 rare types of relationships that serve as stabilizers during the turbulent process of individuation, when one begins the sacred journey of integrating the conscious self with the unconscious depths. The first is the presence of fellow individuated people, those who have already walked through their own inner darkness, faced their shadow, and emerged with a sense of grounded authenticity. These individuals don't just tolerate your truth, they honor it. Being around them feels like a spiritual homecoming. They recognize your growth without fear, without projection, without competition. Their intelligence is quiet, their spiritual wisdom hard-earned, and their mere presence gives you permission to fully be yourself without performance. Then there are those who are still undergoing the individuation process. They are seekers, like you wounded, searching, unfolding. They may still be in the storm, but they are not asleep. They are honest about their flaws, their inner work, and their desire to grow. Their humility creates a mirror for your own transformation. In their presence, you don't feel pressure to be perfect. You feel inspired to stay committed to your path. They're the ones who cry with you, question everything with you, and remind you that healing is not linear. And Jung speaks of natural containers, stable, grounded individuals who might not speak the language of spirituality or shadow work, but who have an intuitive emotional sturdiness. They are not threatened by intensity. They don't rush your process. They don't pathologize your feelings. They simply sit with you, witness you, and allow you to unfold without fear. In the chaos of modern life, where most relationships are transactional or superficial, these people are rare. But when found, They act as quiet sanctuaries. They don't talk much about spiritual awakening, but they embody a deep, silent support that is more healing than 1,000 words. These three types of relationships are essential because the deeper you journey into the psyche, the more selective you must become. The soul craves resonance, not noise. Integration is not just an internal process. It is shaped, triggered, and held by those around you. Choose carefully. Not everyone is equipped to hold the truth of who you are becoming. Not everyone deserves access to your unfolding. This path is sacred, and it requires companions who understand that awakening is not a trend, but a lifelong unraveling into wholeness. 8. The 4 stages of transformation. The 4 stages of transformation: recognition without overwhelm, integration without isolation, service without self-sacrifice, and legacy without attachment are not static checkpoints, but living energies within the soul's ongoing process of spiritual development. Recognition without overwhelm is the awakening of inner sight, a moment when you begin to witness your patterns, traumas, and hidden fears without collapsing under their weight. It is the sacred shift from unconscious reaction to conscious observation. You don't try to fix everything at once. You simply allow yourself to see, to name what has been suppressed, and to hold space for your own complexity. This is the foundation of spirituality, because only through awareness can healing begin. As you move deeper, integration without isolation becomes essential. Many who awaken spiritually feel the urge to withdraw, to protect themselves from a world that no longer feels aligned. But real integration asks you to stay in your body, your relationships, your responsibilities, and bring your higher awareness with you. You do not have to exile yourself in order to evolve. In fact, the test of spiritual growth is not how long you can meditate in silence, but how consciously you can live amid chaos, how gently you can respond when triggered, and how deeply you can remain rooted while interacting with others who are still asleep. This leads to service without self-sacrifice, where your light becomes a gift to others, not as a martyr, but as a vessel of overflow. True service is not about rescuing or draining yourself to be worthy. It is about offering what flows naturally from the healed places within you. Carl Jung warned of the dangers of identification with the savior archetype, where the desire to help becomes a trap of ego disguised as virtue. Real service honors both your yes and your no. It knows that you cannot pour from an empty cup, and that boundaries are not barriers. They are sacred containers of your energy. The final stage, legacy without attachment, is perhaps the most advanced form of spiritual maturity. It is the release of control over how your impact is received, remembered, or even acknowledged. You create, you teach, you love, and you let go. You no longer measure your worth by recognition, nor your value by results. Like a tree that sheds its fruit without asking who will eat it, you contribute your essence to the world without clinging to outcomes. This detachment is not coldness, it is wisdom. It is the trust that everything you offer from the soul becomes part of a larger pattern beyond your comprehension. And in this trust, you become free. The entire cycle of transformation is not meant to be completed. Once and for all, it is a spiral. You return again and again, each time with deeper understanding, sharper clarity, and softer presence. Spirituality is not perfection. It is the art of walking through fire without losing your gentleness. of standing in the storm while staying anchored in truth, of choosing love over fear when your wounds beg you to run. And through this dance of shadow and light, the soul learns not just to awaken, but to embody that awakening moment by moment, breath by breath. 9. Pitfalls that derail the journey. Carl Jung's insights into the spiritual path revealed not only its beauty, but its hidden dangers, particularly for those who begin to see what others can't. One of the most common and deceptive pitfalls is the inflation trap, where individuals who experience deep spiritual awakenings start to believe they are prophets or chosen ones, superior to others. This illusion of elevated status feeds the ego under the guise of spiritual growth, making one believe they have transcended the human condition, when in truth, they've simply fallen into a more subtle form of self-delusion. Jung warned that true intelligence and spiritual wisdom require humility, not grandiosity. The more awakened you become, the more grounded you must be, because the moment you start to think you're above others is the exact moment you separate yourself from the truth of oneness. Closely tied to this is the withdrawal trap, where the awakened soul, overwhelmed by the artificiality and suffering of the world, feels the urge to isolate completely. But while solitude is essential for clarity, total rejection of society often leads to alienation and despair. Jung believed that transformation isn't about running from the world, but learning how to live in it without losing your soul. The challenge lies in walking among illusions while maintaining inner truth. Spiritual awakening isn't permission to disappear from humanity. It's a call to return with deeper presence and light. Another subtle danger is the helper's trap, where one loses themselves in the endless mission of saving others. This is especially common among empaths, who naturally absorb and heal the pain around them. But when your identity becomes tied to being the rescuer, you forget your own healing. Jung emphasized that martyrdom is not the path to wholeness. Intelligence and spiritual wisdom means knowing when to give and when to retreat, when to offer your light and when to protect it. Helping others cannot come at the cost of your own soul. And finally, there's the overwhelming relapse, when spiritual growth feels like it's collapsing under pressure. In moments of stress, old behaviors return, and it can feel like all progress has vanished. But Jung reminds us that this is not failure. It's a deeper layer of the unconscious revealing itself. True awakening is not linear. You rise, you fall, and you rise again each time with more awareness. Regression is part of the path. What matters is not staying perfect, but staying present. Because the real test of spiritual intelligence is not how much light you can hold in peace, but how much light you can carry through the storm. 10. The evolutionary role. They are not broken. They are advanced. Those whom Carl Jung called consciousness pioneers are not here to adapt to the world, but to transform it. Their spiritual awakening is not a side effect of sensitivity. It is the evolution of perception itself. While others are content with surfaces, these individuals are burdened with depth. They see what others won't look at, feel what others deny, and know what hasn't yet been said. Their insight pierces illusions, and that piercing often hurts not just them, but the collective psyche that resists being exposed. And yet, their purpose is not to suffer under the weight of what they see. Their purpose is to awaken humanity to bring what is hidden in the shadows into the light of collective understanding. to initiate healing by making the unconscious conscious. In Jung's words, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That is their mission, not to escape the darkness, but to walk through it holding the torch for others. This gift, however, comes with a price. In a world addicted to comfort and conformity, they are often misunderstood, mislabeled, and even feared. People mistake their deep perception for weakness or instability, not realizing that it takes immense inner strength to carry so much psychic truth. But these individuals are not fragile. They are forged by the very forces they are meant to transform. Their emotional intelligence is not excess. It is evolutionary. They are not simply reacting. They are translating energetic data, decoding spiritual signals, and holding space for what others repress. In the workplace, they spot dysfunction before it erupts. In relationships, they sense betrayal before it occurs. In society, they detect systemic collapse before the headlines catch up. This level of perception isolates them, yes, but it also places them in the unique position of leading the shift. Their pain is prophetic, their intuition is instructional, and their wisdom is ancestral. They are not here to be validated by the old system. They are here to be the architects of the new. And so, their role is not just personal, it is profoundly collective. Every time they alchemize confusion into clarity, or fear into understanding, they are participating in the slow but necessary evolution of human consciousness. Spirituality is not about escaping the world, but about awakening within it. And those with this gift are the front line of that awakening. They are not just empaths or intuitives. They are energetic surgeons, karmic decoders, and pattern breakers. They show us that spiritual wisdom is not found in books alone, but in the courage to face what others avoid. Their journey is not for applause, but for alignment, not for fame, but for frequency. And while the path may feel lonely, it is never empty. For every insight, every breakthrough, every moment of quiet knowing moves the collective forward. And so, as Carl Jung warned us, the ability to see what others can't is both a gift and a hidden peril. It can isolate you, test you, and at times, even break you. But if embraced with wisdom, it can also transform you into something extraordinary. The question is, how will you carry this vision in your own life? If you found this message meaningful, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. And be sure to turn on notifications so you never miss our upcoming insights into the deep mysteries of the human soul. Until next time, keep seeking, keep awakening, and remember, your perception is your power. You are smarter than most people. You are not antisocial. As Albert Einstein once said, the monotony and solitude of a quiet life stimulates the creative mind. If you've ever felt out of place in a crowded room, preferring the depth of your own thoughts over shallow conversations, it's not because you're antisocial. It's because your intelligence is guiding you toward deeper meaning. In this video from Spiritual Wisdom, we'll uncover why solitude is often the companion of those with sharper minds and how embracing this truth can lead to profound spiritual awakening and personal growth. Do you believe intelligence naturally draws us toward solitude? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear your perspective. 1. Intelligent people and solitude. Intelligent people often step away from social life not because they despise others or carry arrogance in their hearts, but because they sense that life has a depth far beyond what can be found in shallow conversations and fleeting entertainments, and this inner knowing pulls them into solitude where meaning is clearer and truth is sharper. For Arthur Schopenhauer, solitude was not a weakness, but the natural destiny of those who think deeply. Because once the mind is awakened to greater truths, the soul finds little nourishment in triviality. In our modern world, this truth is even more visible, as countless people fill their days with social noise, endless gossip, and digital distractions, while those with intelligence and spiritual awakening quietly withdraw, recognizing that peace and wisdom cannot be cultivated in chaos. To prefer solitude is not to be antisocial. It is to be selective, to choose what uplifts the soul rather than what drains it, and to stand firm in the awareness that silence often speaks more powerfully than 1,000 empty words. Schopenhauer understood that solitude is the workshop of the mind and the sanctuary of the spirit, where creativity blossoms, vision sharpens, and wisdom matures. And this is why history's greatest thinkers, inventors, and prophets have always cherished silence. Today, solitude may look like choosing an evening of reading, meditation, or reflection over the lure of constant connection, or walking away from a crowded room, not because you dislike people, but because you crave a conversation with your own soul. This choice is not selfish. It is sacred, because through solitude, a man refines his intelligence and discovers the spiritual truths that guide him forward. In a society that often mistakes busyness for success and noise for vitality, the intelligent man must remember that stillness is where transformation begins, and that a mind trained in solitude is a mind that can withstand any storm. Yet true solitude is never about building walls of pride. It is about creating space to hear the deeper voice within, the voice of wisdom that whispers through silence. Intelligence without spirituality risks becoming cold and detached, but intelligence joined with spiritual awakening becomes a force of clarity, compassion, and higher vision. This means that the man who embraces solitude must not use it as a weapon of superiority, but as a well from which he draws insight to serve others. Modern life constantly demands that we be available, visible, and responsive. Yet the intelligent and spiritually awakened soul knows the power of stepping back, of saying no, of carving sacred time for reflection, so that his presence in the world becomes more meaningful when he chooses to engage. Therefore, solitude should be seen not as an escape from people, but as a return to self, not as rejection of the world, but as preparation to re-enter it with strength and wisdom. The man who chooses solitude learns that silence is not emptiness, but fullness, not loneliness, but freedom. And in that freedom, he discovers his truest identity. Schopenhauer's wisdom reminds us that solitude is the natural companion of intelligence, and spirituality teaches us that it is also the soil in which awakening grows. To embrace solitude is to embrace transformation, and to walk away from the superficial is to walk toward the eternal, where the soul finds the clarity it has been longing for all along. Do you often feel more at peace in solitude than in a crowd? If yes, share your story in the comments so others can connect with your experience. If not, simply comment, "I will embrace solitude," to begin honoring your intelligence and spiritual wisdom today. 2. Shallow interactions versus depth of mind. Most people spend their days caught up in surface-level exchanges, conversations that circle around weather, money, or trivial matters. Interactions that are often more about protecting ego and maintaining appearances than sharing anything real. To someone whose intelligence runs deep, this kind of social life can feel draining, artificial, and hollow because they see through the performance. They notice the masks people wear, the rehearsed smiles, the empty laughter that tries to cover over discomfort or insecurity. What feels like connection to others may feel like deception to them because the energy is not rooted in authenticity. This is why many highly intelligent individuals often choose solitude, not because they dislike people, but because they are searching for something truer than small talk and rituals of ego. Solitude becomes a sanctuary where they can think freely, breathe deeply, and listen to the quiet truths that ordinary noise drowns out. In this silence, they find clarity, because the absence of shallow performance allows the soul to stretch into new dimensions of understanding. This choice is not arrogance, but alignment, an inner decision to honor what feels genuine. When you strip away the need to perform for others, what remains is a space of raw honesty, where you are no longer bound by superficial expectations, but liberated to be yourself fully. This is the space where spirituality and spiritual development flourish, because in solitude, you can finally hear the voice of intuition and the call of your higher self. History's greatest minds, from philosophers to poets, recognize this truth. Arthur Schopenhauer once observed, "The more unintelligent a man is, the less mysterious existence seems to him." His words reveal that shallow interactions flatten life into routines, while the intelligent, the spiritually awake, and the seekers of truth sense that life itself is layered with mysteries that cannot be reached through empty chatter. Those who feel alien in superficial gatherings are not antisocial. They are simply attuned to a different frequency, one that longs for authenticity and depth. This longing manifests in everyday choices, preferring a meaningful book to endless gossip, a quiet walk in nature to a crowded party, an honest conversation to a room full of masks. Each of these choices is a declaration that the quality of life matters more than its noise, and that the spirit grows stronger in silence than in performance. The pull toward solitude is also the pull toward inner expansion, because when you are alone, you are not really lonely. You are with yourself, and in that presence lies the beginning of wisdom. Solitude becomes the soil where seeds of insight, clarity, and strength take root. It teaches you to value depth over distraction, essence over appearance, and authenticity over approval. If you have ever felt drained by shallow conversations, if you have ever walked away from a crowd and felt relief in your own company, know that it is not a flaw, but a sign of intelligence and a call to spiritual development. It is life's way of showing you that your path is meant to go deeper, that your spirit hungers for truth, and that your growth cannot be confined to shallow waters. Protect your energy and do not apologize for seeking depth. Let solitude become your teacher, your mirror, and your sanctuary. For when you honor this call, you discover that true connection is not about quantity, but quality. Not about ego, but essence. And not about being everywhere, but being fully present where truth is allowed to live. If you know your mind was made for depth, not shallow interactions, comment below. I choose depth to affirm your path of spiritual wisdom and intelligence. 3. Solitude as freedom and authenticity. Schopenhauer once said, "A man can be himself only so long as he is alone." Solitude is not a curse, nor is it a rejection of others. It is freedom, the purest state where the soul breathes and the mind is allowed to expand without interference. In solitude, intelligence flourishes, creativity awakens, and truth reveals itself with clarity. To be alone is to walk into the inner sanctuary where distractions fade and authenticity emerges. It is not loneliness, but a form of liberation that gives you permission to be fully yourself. When the world demands masks, solitude offers you the mirror of your own soul. Most people run from this mirror because it forces them to face what they have long buried. They cling to constant noise, endless conversations, and fleeting entertainment, so they never have to sit with their true thoughts. But if you feel called to silence, if you find comfort in solitude, it means your intelligence is guiding you to something greater. Carl Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." To turn inward is not antisocial behavior. It is the beginning of awakening, the threshold of spiritual wisdom. Solitude is not emptiness, but the soil where self-awareness and transformation take root. History shows us that the greatest thinkers embrace solitude as their ally. Albert Einstein admitted, "The monotony and solitude of a quiet life stimulates the creative mind." Nikola Tesla walked alone so he could listen to ideas that others were too distracted to hear. Leonardo da Vinci withdrew from the crowd not because he despised people, but because he needed the silence to unlock the visions that changed the world. Their solitude was not isolation, but connection to higher intelligence, to truth, to the divine spark of inspiration. What others mistook as detachment was, in fact, the path to genius. If you find that crowded rooms exhaust you, if endless small talk leaves you restless, it does not mean you are broken or cold-hearted. It means your mind is designed for depth. You hunger for meaning, not for noise, for genuine connection, not superficial approval. Choosing to step away is not weakness, but strength, not arrogance, but intelligence. You are protecting the sanctity of your energy, conserving it for what truly matters. Spiritual wisdom teaches us that silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of alignment with the self. Solitude becomes the sacred ground where your inner voice grows louder than the world's distractions. When you embrace solitude, you discover that you are not running away from life. You are stepping into the heart of it. This is where your intelligence sharpens, where your soul speaks, and where your spirit finds peace. Schopenhauer was right. Only in solitude do we truly meet ourselves. Jung was right. Only by looking inward do we awaken. And the truth is clear. Your solitude is not a sign of being antisocial. It is proof that you are smarter than most people, that you are aligned with spiritual wisdom, and that you are brave enough to seek authenticity in a world addicted to noise. If solitude feels like freedom and a return to your true self, comment below. I embrace authenticity. Let this be your commitment to living with intelligence and spiritual wisdom. 4. Intelligence and suffering. With deeper awareness comes an intensity of suffering, because the more clearly one sees the truth of life, the more one feels the weight of impermanence, absurdity, and endless striving. Intelligence and suffering are inseparable, for once the veil of illusion is lifted, you can no longer hide behind the comforting distractions that shield most people from reality. You begin to notice how everything is fleeting, how desires burn brightly but fade quickly, and how every pursuit of pleasure or success leads back to the same emptiness. Arthur Schopenhauer's words ring true here. The more intelligent a man is, the more he suffers. This does not mean that intelligence condemns you to misery, but rather that it opens your eyes to see beyond the surface of existence, where most people are content to dwell. To live with intelligence and spiritual awakening is to feel the sharp edges of reality, to sense the futility of chasing what never lasts, and to recognize that desire and dissatisfaction form an endless cycle. A man may long for wealth, status, or companionship, and for a brief moment, he may feel fulfilled. But soon, the dissatisfaction returns, urging him to chase something else. When you are awake, you see this cycle clearly, and that very clarity can feel unbearable. Yet within this suffering lies the seed of wisdom. For the pain of seeing life's illusions dissolves the false and draws you toward what is real. Spirituality teaches that suffering is not an enemy, but a guide, a fire that refines the soul in the same way gold is purified in the furnace. Through suffering, you begin to seek meaning not in the external world, but in the depths of your own being, where truth and freedom reside. In modern life, this truth is often misunderstood. Those who prefer solitude over noisy company are quickly judged as antisocial. Yet solitude for the awakened man is not loneliness, but strength. It is in solitude that clarity deepens, creativity unfolds, and the inner voice becomes audible. The Bible reminds us, "Be still and know that I am God." And that stillness is not a void, but a doorway into wisdom and peace. In a society obsessed with distraction and noise, choosing silence becomes a radical act of courage, and it is in that silence that the intelligent man discovers his power. Carl Jung noted that man needs difficulties. They are necessary for health. And this insight shows that suffering and conflict are not curses, but essential teachers in the process of individuation, the path to becoming whole. When you carry the burden of awareness, it is easy to feel out of place in a world where others seem satisfied with shallow pursuits. But this feeling is not a flaw. It is evidence that your spirit is awake. Intelligence strips away the illusions of permanence and control. And although this stripping brings pain, it also invites transformation. The suffering that once felt heavy begins to reveal its higher purpose, for it teaches you detachment from false promises and aligns you with deeper truths. Rather than running from this awareness, embrace it, for it is through suffering that wisdom matures, and through solitude that strength is born. The intelligent man, awakened to the cycles of life, learns not to numb himself with distractions, but to sit with his thoughts, to meditate, to write, to grow, and to live with a freedom untouchable by the illusions that bind others. And though the journey is not without pain, it is precisely this pain that becomes the path to profound wisdom, lasting strength, and the quiet dignity of a soul fully awake. Leave a like and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss powerful insights on intelligence and suffering. Type in the comments, "I embrace my intelligence and rise above suffering." to affirm your journey today. 5. Detachment as rebellion. Arthur Schopenhauer once described society as a stage where countless individuals wear masks, each one carefully crafted to gain approval, validation, and applause. Yet beneath these masks lies a deep emptiness that the intelligent soul cannot ignore. When you begin to see the world in this way, the constant pursuit of recognition feels shallow, almost meaningless, and you realize how much of human life is spent chasing illusions rather than truth. This is why those with higher intelligence often feel detached, not because they despise people, but because they sense something greater beyond the performance. Detachment becomes a quiet rebellion, a refusal to keep playing roles that were never authentic to begin with, a way of protecting one's inner integrity. It is not about rejecting life, but about rejecting false values, shallow conversations, and the exhausting pursuit of appearances. For true spirituality and spiritual development only begin when you stop living through borrowed scripts and start creating your own. In this rebellion of detachment, freedom takes on a new meaning, because freedom is no longer about doing what the crowd approves of, but about setting your own pace, defining your own values, and walking your own path. The intelligent person understands that solitude is not isolation, but sacred ground for growth, creativity, and clarity. While many run from solitude because it confronts them with their own inner emptiness, those who are spiritually awakened embrace it as the place where wisdom matures and self-respect is born. In solitude, masks fall away, illusions dissolve, and you are left with the raw truth of who you are. Detachment, then, is not coldness. It is the highest form of respect for your soul, a conscious decision to no longer let your energy be drained by conformity. It is a rebellion that says, I will no longer measure myself by the shallow yardsticks of society. I will no longer trade authenticity for acceptance, and I will no longer live to satisfy the fleeting applause of others. In the context of modern life, this kind of detachment may look like refusing to chase empty status symbols, resisting shallow social circles, or daring to slow down in a culture obsessed with constant acceleration. It means saying no to the endless cycle of comparison and competition, and instead choosing mindfulness, presence, and authenticity. In a society addicted to noise, distraction, and performance, detachment becomes a radical act of spiritual awakening, a choice to live deeply rather than superficially. Schopenhauer's insight pushes you to ask yourself with honesty, what values truly belong to you, and what values have you unconsciously inherited from others? Which beliefs have shaped your choices, and which ones no longer serve your growth? By peeling away the illusions and discarding the false, you discover the true self waiting beneath the self that cannot be bought, shaped, or silenced by societal expectations. To live this way is to understand that not fitting into the crowd is not a flaw, but a form of strength, a sign that your intelligence has awakened you to realities others have not yet seen. It is an acknowledgement that true belonging begins not when others accept you, but when you fully belong to yourself. Detachment, as rebellion, is not about turning your back on the world, but about engaging with it from a place of truth, depth, and authenticity. It is about having the courage to stand apart when necessary, the wisdom to embrace solitude when it nurtures your soul, and the clarity to choose authenticity over illusion. When you live in this way, you embody the essence of spiritual development, proving through your presence that real freedom is not found in approval, but in authenticity, not in masks, but in truth, and not in the crowd, but in the unshakable strength of your own soul. Do you feel the power of detachment as a true act of rebellion? If you do, write it with conviction in the comments. I choose detachment. I choose freedom. 6. The sacred power of solitude. Solitude is not a punishment nor a sign of weakness. It is the sacred crucible where intelligence and spiritual wisdom are refined. When you step away from society's endless chatter, you begin to hear the deeper rhythm of your own soul. And in that silence, you uncover truths that the noise of the world often hides. Carl Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." And solitude is the very space where this awakening begins. The quiet you seek is not about rejecting people. It is about choosing authenticity over pretense, clarity over confusion, and depth over superficiality. This inner detachment is not antisocial behavior. It is the natural call of higher intelligence guiding you toward spiritual awakening. In solitude, you discover the rare freedom that comes from no longer needing to dilute your thoughts with the opinions of others. You begin to think more clearly, create more boldly, and feel more deeply. History shows us that the most intelligent minds, whether philosophers like Schopenhauer or visionaries across cultures, have always embraced solitude not as isolation, but as a wellspring of insight. Schopenhauer wrote that the more intelligent a man is, the more he suffers. Yet this suffering, when carried into solitude, transforms into profound understanding. The world may call you antisocial, but the truth is that solitude allows you to meet yourself without masks, to confront your fears and desires, and to discover wisdom that no social interaction could ever reveal. As this process unfolds, you realize that true freedom is not the ability to follow every impulse, but the strength to detach from illusions and live in alignment with your own truth. Solitude burns away the distractions and leaves you with the essence of who you really are. Intelligence matures here, not because of accumulated knowledge, but because of the courage to think independently, to question what others accept blindly, and to awaken to the depth of your own being. The clarity that arises becomes the foundation for peace, for creativity, and for an unshakable sense of self-knowledge. Solitude, then, is not emptiness, but fullness. It is the place where authenticity blossoms, where ideas spark with fire, and where the spirit feels free to expand beyond society's narrow definitions. Blaise Pascal once observed, "All of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone," and his words reveal a timeless truth. Most people fear solitude because it forces them to confront themselves. But for those with intelligence and spiritual wisdom, solitude is liberation. It allows you to detach from shallow expectations, to deepen your awareness, and to live in the presence of truth rather than illusion. The next time someone labels you antisocial, understand that what they are really seeing is the power of your intelligence and your refusal to conform to superficiality. You are not running away from connection. You are choosing a higher connection, one that links you to your inner self and to the vast reservoir of spiritual wisdom within. This choice is not about isolation, but about transformation, not about disconnection, but about awakening. In solitude, you will find the sacred space where your intelligence sharpens, your spirit awakens, and your soul discovers the freedom it was always destined to claim. To honor the sacred power of solitude, make your declaration today. Comment below, "I embrace solitude," to affirm your strength and inspire others to find wisdom in their own silence. And so, the truth is clear. Choosing solitude is not a flaw, but a sign of deeper intelligence and self-awareness. When you step away from the noise, you are not rejecting the world. You are embracing a higher path that only a few dare to walk. If this message has resonated with you, I invite you to like this video, share it with others who may need to hear it, and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos. Until next time, may your journey of self-discovery and inner strength continue to guide you toward true wisdom.